My final topic of this evening is really interesting because the UN Women UK charity has now just chosen a transgender model as their first UK champion. And they've chosen a biological man, a trans woman now, called Munro Bergdorf. But who's been branded completely unsuitable by no less than 17 women's rights groups who've actually written to the charity. And this is, it does seem fairly strange for a UN women's charity that is trying to help women's rights, particularly for those who have been subject to abuse, domestic violence, and indeed for girls, to ask a biological man. Does that seem, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's perfectly normal, perfectly reasonable for that? Well, I'm delighted to be joined in the studio to discuss this by a discrimination and employment lawyer, Robin Moore-Wright. Robin, very good evening. Thanks for joining us. So this is, it's quite an interesting one, isn't it? You've got a women's charity, part of the United Nations, which has chosen to be their first UK champion, a transgender woman, Munro Bergdorf, who's got quite a track record. I guess there are two issues here. One is it appropriate and suitable to choose a biological man, now a trans woman, to head up a charity essentially defending and protecting and looking after women's rights? I guess that's question number one. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, firstly, she's not heading the charity; she's being a champion of it. So it's the UN is very used to appointing ambassadors, and they're often ambassadors who challenge normal thinking.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, if we think of Malala Yousafzai, who was the Pakistani girl who was shot on a bus, if you remember, who is the champion for women's education for the UN. If we were to ask people in the Pakistani street, for example, I mean, she was very unpopular with certain parts of the...
But she's a girl who understands girl and women issues, and I guess that's a question. Can a biological man be that champion as well as a biological woman?
Well, look, I am a trans woman as well. I get patronised. I get treated in the way that women are treated commonly in the street. So I understand those issues. I'm sure that Munro does. But she is there to advance women's rights and women's issues. And the very fact that she's on your channel being talked about women's rights and women's issues are here tonight and at the same level of interest rates. I'm so glad I'm not talking about interest rates. But here we are on GB News talking about women's rights in the middle of the evening. She's therefore straight away achieved what she's there to do as a champion.
And that's part of, and so a charity like this, how many champions would they have, for example, in the UN's women charity? Any idea?
Forgive me, I'm not familiar with the numbers, but a small number, not vast numbers.
So pretty influential position.
Yeah, but there's no bar that says they can't have another champion or more than one champion.
And let's look at Munro Bergdorf, essentially her CV, because actually she's made some pretty outrageous claims in the past. I mean, Facebook had to remove some posts. She said she angered feminists by saying that women are getting feminists wrong. They shouldn't focus on male reproduction. She was actually I think she was a model by L'Oréal Paris, who dropped her because of some of her comments about white people. She said some pretty outrageous stuff. She said all white people as a group are brought up racist. I mean, can someone who's got those sort of views really be a champion for women?
Well, Richard, come on, members of your party have made some fairly outrageous statements in public, but can do good. So she's certainly a name that we know. She's a face that will
let's just look at some of these quotes that Munro's put. We've just got those on the screen now. We can just... there we are. It says, honestly, I don't have the energy to talk about the racial violence of white people anymore. Yes, all white people. I mean, that's pretty extraordinary. And the suffragettes were white supremacists. I have to tell you, no one in any party that I've been involved with has ever said anything like that. And she was essentially, I think Facebook took this down. So, look, we live in a world of free speech. She's entitled to a view. I guess the question is, you're happy that that a trans woman can be the champion for this charity. The second question is actually, given all the choice of great women that they could have asked to be the champion, is it appropriate to choose someone with such a controversial track record and background?
Well, I wasn't part of the interview panel, so I can't say. But she plainly is a person who has a public personality. And here we are, the UK UN charity being talked about on TV News.
And in a sense, women's rights, that's a good thing, that's an important thing. And
excellent thing. And many black people have a view that they are a disadvantaged group as well. Now, that could have been expressed differently than the statements that you've read out.
Yep.
But it's very plain, therefore, that people are going to see her and know that.
And what about these 17 groups, women's groups, who've written, basically said they're very disappointed. The female population in the UK is more than 33 million, but you've ignored every one of us and chosen a male. I mean, that's pretty punchy stuff as well, isn't it? Saying that Munro's well-publicised activism is not pro-women.
Right. Every time you appoint someone, you're excluding someone else. So when the next person is appointed, have all those other people been excluded?
She was dropped.
Have we just picked one?
Yeah, and she was dropped, interestingly, as an ambassador. You touched on ambassadors, the importance of them earlier, to a children's charity called Childline because of inappropriate messages that were counter to safeguarding norms. So let's put it like this. It's probably, I think we probably agree, is it a surprising choice to you?
It's a controversial choice.
It's a controversial choice, without question.
Yeah.
Well, I think there we are. We've got an agreement on that. We've got a letter from 17 different women's groups expressing their disappointment. And Robin, thank you so much for your choice on that. Well, I'm interested in your views about that. We can look at that tomorrow. We've obviously got that great interview tomorrow night about the child maintenance service. But